Ahoy!
Hey buddies, we're back. We've got guns. A gun.
What?
I don't know if you know this, but that means it's not real.
What about this hat? Is it real leather?
This is Neptune. He's real.
Real annoying. Ha! Ha ha! I'm just wondering, when did you rob Crocodile Dundee?
For Halloween.
You robbed Crocodile Dundee? Oh.
I was technically the Outlaw Josie Wales, but it was too hot to wear the awesome poncho. Actually, from.
I thought you were a llama. Didn't we do a video with you being a llama?
Yeah, that was a whole nother. I went all out for Halloween.
You have a lot of costumes.
Yep.
I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
All right, so we wanted to talk about. We kind of want to do a series based.
I was doing an intro.
That wasn't your intro? All right, go ahead.
So
I'll just sit over here.
What Rudolph was trying to say was, we've been getting a lot of great feedback from our affiliate owners out there that are on the program. A lot of great questions along with the feedback. The general consensus is that people are loving the old school outlaw flavor that's now been recalibrated to fit the 60-minute class, and that's going real well. But a lot of questions in terms of, I shouldn't say a lot, there have been a few questions in terms of, hey, it seems like a lot of these movements are very repetitive. There's a lot of redundancy when it comes to certain movements. And my knee-jerk reaction is to respond to that was like, yeah, well, are you talking about the strength movements? And yeah. Well, Olympic weightlifting and strength are two of the huge cornerstones of our program, and to build strength requires, by definition, redundancy of movements. But
it's like being good at a sport.
Right, you gotta practice.
To get good at basketball, what do? You hit some baseballs.
You dribble a lot of basketballs.
Dribble basketballs works usually.
So that being said, I've found in the course of working with Rudy over the last 9 to 10 years that we have a lot of great discussions behind the scenes, and I think that maybe there's some doubt, or regardless, that we shared more of those discussions publicly in this forum, it would appease a lot of the anxiety people might have as far as, what's the reasoning behind this. Now, the goal is for me is that as affiliate owners, when you see this content a few times, you go, okay, cool. Like John says, they got it. The program, they got it. And you take even the time you're using to watch this video right now, and you reinvest that time and that energy and that passion into the things you love to do, and then to things that are going to be way more valuable in terms of building your community and the sustainability of your business, which all three of those are somewhat synonymous, right? If you're doing the things you love to do, taking care of yourself and your loved ones and your family, you're going to have more energy to put back into your community, which is also going to make the business more sustainable, et cetera, et cetera. So it could be anything from having coaches developmental meetings to planning more events to competitions, et cetera, et cetera. As small business owners, there's always something else. There's always something else you could be doing, like putting your microphone on.
That might have been really bad.
Yeah. There's always stuff that you could be doing to grow the business, and we've got the programming. So we're going to go down some rabbit holes. If you already trust us and you got it, or you're just, have other things to be doing, by all means, click it off. But if you would like to educate yourself, if nothing else, to answer the questions to your clients when they ask about, hey, why is there a lot of redundancy, then by all means, stay tuned.
That's the big thing for me, right? Like when the client comes up to you and says, hey, why do we do so many, ring rows, for instance, right?
Right.
We want you guys to be able to have an answer for that. I'm the one with ADD. I just sat here for your entire bullet point.
That's a really good point, dude. I'm so proud of you.
Speech like a good boy.
I'm proud of you.
And you immediately went into playing with things mode. No.
Does that help?
It's not. It actually looks okay on you.
I know. I already put it on.
Maybe you want to take it off though so people can take, or you're just gonna
staying on,
distract the whole thing, huh? Way to go, Crocodile. Good day, mate.
Oh, that's really bright.
Surprised you didn't burn a hole in your retina. Yeah, so being able to tell your clients what you're doing, why you're doing it is super important, and like having good reasoning for it. Why do we repeat? Why do we snatch on Mondays? Why do we snatch every Monday? Why don't we do whatever craziness we want to do? And it's like we were talking about. This is a sport with multiple modalities in it, right? Excuse me, I just burped myself. Sorry about that.
It's all right. I was drinking my nitro brew. This is water.
You're just stealing all. It's good thing
alcohol.
Amanda brought me this.
Professional.
Very nice of her. So it's a sport with multiple modalities. It's much like, I don't know, decathlon, something like that. There's multiple disciplines that you have to be good at. Now, using decathlon kind of as an example, what do you think that do you know the elements of the decathlon? Some of them. You don't know any of them?
Mm-mm.
Well, is it
like the actual individual events?
Yeah.
They do like the discus and
what do you think the hardest of the events is? Or the one that gets the most practice?
The one that's the highest skill.
Do you know what it is?
Javelin. Oh, the pole vault.
Pole vault, right? No, I'm not saying that for sure, right? Javelin, they throw javelin, yes. They throw discus, yes. I'm sure those are very difficult as well, right? Because that's a throwing thing. You got to hit a defined area. Mm-hmm. But pole vault, I actually coached a very high level, like a Division I pole vaulter one time, and asked her, how hard is that? We don't need to measure Ingrid.
Oh.
And asked her how hard, like pole vaulting looks crazy to me. I think the majority of the world thinks it's crazy. How hard is it? And she was like, it's that hard. It's a combination of gymnastics and sprinting, and you got to go over it's crazy. Pole vaulting is crazy. So decathletes likely are not, they're likely natural sprinters or natural 1500 runners or whatever.
Didn't it evolve out of the Greek games as far as, because it was like how they got over city walls to go like fight?
If that's true, then it's always been one of my favorite like track and field events. If that's true, it immediately moves to number one. That's pretty cool if it is.
I have no idea if that's right. That's just what I would guess.
But the point there being is that they still run. They run because they have to be in shape for running. They have to know what the different distances feels like. They have to be able to buffer lactic acid, blah blah blah.
Sorry, it's
You're
too much.
Worse than I am.
You put it on the table.
It's amazing. Take it away from you. They still need to, but they don't need to practice running to the point that they need to practice something like pole vault or javelin or whatever. Those are high skill as well as very athletic movements. So that brings us. I'm gonna have to not step on him.
Don't you step on him.
I'm not gonna. He's big though. I don't even think he'd know. So that brings us to our hierarchy of movement. So this is something we've talked about for years. We talked about it at seminars. And it's something that I probably was pretty set on in like 2011, 2012, basically because we would go to these competitions, we would coach athletes, we would go to these competitions, even people just in our gym. And what does everybody struggle with? They all struggle with the same thing, right? How long does it take you to teach an athlete how to do a burpee?
3 seconds.
3 seconds. Fall down. Right?
Stand
Try
up.
not to hit. This is what takes the most amount of time. Try not to break your jaw.
You can hit your face, it still counts.
Or it still counts. It just hurts. Right? Fall down. Get your ass back up again. Yeah. That's pretty much the entire movement. Right? Mm-hmm. Things like that. The burpee being the sort of the most absurd example of how easy those things are. But things like that don't take very long to teach. What takes the longest to teach to an athlete? Depending on the athlete, right? Unless they're walk in the door and they're an ex-gymnast, the first time I tell them to put their hands wide and catch the barbell on the bottom of a squat, it usually looks like a monkey.
Yeah.
Indignantly touching
doing wrong things
football, doing not nice things to a football, right? And those are the things that we never get perfect at them, right? It's impossible to perfect those movements. And especially the Olympic lifts are an entire sport unto themselves, mm-hmm. right? It's like if all of a sudden CrossFit HQ said, okay, now, you know what? I got a good example. Do you remember the 2011 games? BP, right? Becky Conzelman, rest in peace. We were there coaching her, and we were coaching BP. Do you remember the softball toss?
Yep. Vividly.
Literally one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life, right? I think BP was like top 3 on that, wasn't he?
I forget.
He was a baseball player in high school, college, whatever, and there was plenty of them. I remember vividly, not to get off topic, but Amanda and I already talked about turning this into a podcast, so we can get off topic. We can go as long as we want. I remember vividly Michelle Kenny, who was a D1 softball player, won that event, and she was 3rd overall, I think.
Oh.
She had the 3rd longest throw of anybody. I think Rich beat her. Rich was, by the way, a wonderful D1 baseball player. And I can't remember. BP was close to her.
Oh, of everybody.
Yeah, Michelle Kenny beat all the dudes except like Rich and one other person, right? And the famous thing that came out of that was Jason Kalipa, who was an American who couldn't.
He can't throw.
He can't throw, right? Now the Europeans, right? I think Miko Salo was actually decent, even though he looked like he was like going to break himself when he threw. But it was funny because you added an aspect of like a real sport into our into CrossFit.
Into the sport of fitness.
Into the sport of fitness, touche, right? And what happened there was people who hadn't practiced that sport were complete trash at it, right? They were terrible. They looked like they were going to fall down, and there was a lot of right-handed throws that looked left-handed and blah, 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 right? That's kind of the same principle here. Those people who had practiced baseball, BP was a high school baseball player, Rich was a D1 baseball player, Michelle Kenny was a really good D1 softball player, right? And they were very good at it and outstanding compared to everybody else. Well, same principle as the Olympic lift, right? It's a sport to itself. So if we only did it every once in a while, what would we end up looking like, right? Pretty god-awful. Right. Not to mention, if you go all the way back to 2012, I think, I wrote an article called "The Importance of Olympic Lifting of Olympic Weightlifting for the Sport of Fitness," which talks about the development of the athlete that happens when they practice the Olympic lifts. Now, this is the key, right? This is we don't really even care. We don't really even care if you have massive lifts, right? We're not necessarily trying to get you to a point where you get massive PRs and you can compete in weight. We've had a lot of athletes who've had success in that.
Can I speak to that real quick?
Yes.
Okay. So, and that's something I'd like to point out too. That I like to point out with my coaches and with certainly my athletes and other affiliate owners now. We're not utilizing the primary function of the snatch in our program is not being utilized for strength.
Hold on. Right there, Amanda should edit, rewind that, and do it again. Say that again. Right? So that should be because it's that important.
Right. The primary function of the snatch in our program is not being utilized for strength. When it comes to getting you guys strong and your client strong, we're going to use the squat and the deadlift. Upper body is going to be some type of press. That's how we build strength. That's what those movements are for. They're doing a lot of other great things too, but those are the primary strength movements. When it comes to the snatch and the Olympic lift, but specifically the snatch, the priority would be things like neuro recruitment, body mechanics, proprioception of your body in time and space, right? You're getting your entire central nervous system to fire and work together and get your whole body to work together as a unit in fractions of a second. So you're building the neurological connection from your brain to those muscles. It's like a path through the woods. And the more it gets grooved, the more efficient, the faster things can travel down that path, so like Rudy was saying, the hierarchy, if you're getting better at the snatch, it's so complicated to your body and requires so much juice CNS wise and is grooving so many different movement patterns, efficient, ideal, optimal movement patterns, right? That if you're getting better at snatch, you're literally simultaneously getting better at pretty much any other dynamic movement you could ever dream up. It's not going to get more complicated than that.
Right. So
while I'm on the roll, you want me to slow down?
I want to interject with something to add on to your point, but don't forget what you're going to say. conversely, who are the people that when they come in the gym, we know they're going to be great athletes when we put a barbell in their hand?
The ones when you tell them to snatch, their body just naturally do.
Right, but who are those people?
The gymnasts.
Gymnasts.
Right.
If I used to say this all the time, if an ex-gymnast walks in your gym, right, and you want yourself a good regional or games athlete, rest in peace regionals, give them the keys to the gym, let them have a free membership, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Because that gymnast is going to be your most technically proficient athlete within weeks, not months, within weeks. The first time you put a barbell in their hand, what are they going to do? Right? You tell them to snatch, they're going to fall to the bottom and hold the bar overhead.
And another point.
And be like, oh, this is pretty easy.
Gymnasts, another small children that haven't spent years sitting and driving and destroying their movement patterns, their bodies understand how to snatch. I mean, obviously we don't put real barbells, but the girls with plastic barbells, whatever, so which brings me to the point, is a perfect segue into the next point I was going to make when it comes to the snatch.
We didn't let me finish my point, but I'll get back to it. No, go.
So we understand that, we understand that a lot of clients aren't going to be able to do a full snatch. We understand that. So don't put pressure on yourself. When you see somebody come in the gym, ask them to snatch, and it just looks like a bag of you-know-what, like it's terrible. And the movement patterns are all jacked up, and they immediately get stressed out, like, I've got to turn this person into an Olympic weightlifter. No, false. You can. In fact, your job is, in our opinion, to meet them right where they're at and help them improve. What better diagnostic tools, all that stuff that just came out in one movement with snatch, you are going to discover anyway, as far as imperfections in their movement patterns or mobility issues or lack of strength, or it all combined. You just got a snapshot of it all at once. So you're welcome for the tool that's going to bring all that to face, and then just meet them where they're at. For a lot of people, they might just start off power snatching a PVC pipe or empty bar, right? I'm a perfect example, right? Just figured out my neck's been twisted for the last 12 years from a bad jump in the military, right? So for the last few months, I haven't been going overhead at all. So do I do snatches? No, I do a lot of stuff, hang power stuff with the clean or dumbbell.
Shocker.
The point is, you just meet them where they're at. You don't have, and then I remind my clients of that all the time too. Hey, we are trying to turn you into a healthy human being that has a life full of wellness and doing whatever it is you love to do out in the real world and quality life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? And what I'm leaving out there is what we're not trying to do is turn you into an actual Olympic weightlifter.
Yeah, so
I mean, if that becomes a passion, cool. But the program is designed for quality of life and optimal living, and that's one of the tools that we use to build that.
So my tier one right here is Olympic lifts and high skill.
Is that too much?
No, dude. Okay, we didn't really plan this, but we actually couldn't be nailing this anymore right now, in my opinion.
Okay.
Right? My tier one, my movements that we need to see a lot, in fact, every day almost, or close to it, is Olympic lifts and high skill gymnastics. Who are the most mobile athletes out of all sport?
Gymnasts.
And don't forget now,
wrestlers, jiu-jitsu.
You could say, in my opinion, it's Olympic weightlifters.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
At least as far as hip functionality goes, right. or through a full strength, through a full range of movement. So here we go, right? So you want your people, everybody probably does yoga sometimes. Everybody loves to do yoga.
Yeah, we do yoga.
Shit like that, right? It's fun. You get stretched out, right? But I've heard so much about core development and yoga and everything else, right? Who do you think has a stronger core? A person that practices yoga, core. A person that practices yoga, or a person that holds a 300-pound barbell overhead, right? Think about trunk stability. What do you think takes more? Holding downward dog or holding 300-pound barbell?
So they both have extremely strong cores. I think a better comparison is, who do you think has a stronger core? The bro bench pressing at the gym that can bench press 405, or
you could compare it to anybody, right? It doesn't matter. These two things, look, there's a reason that Matt Fraser has now walked through the game. Well, I guess this year he didn't, right? There's a reason that Matt Fraser has walked through the games for 4 years in a row, 5 years in a row, whatever. And a reason that Tia-Claire Toomey, who went to the Olympics as a weightlifter, is so good at pull-ups and everything else, right? Because these two things are so complementary to each other. And forget the games athletes, forget the competitors, everything else. If we're talking about developing strength through full range of motion. There is nothing. I will argue with anybody in the world about this, and I will likely at some point win unless they're really, really smart, right? Or know something I don't know. Strength through full range of motion, there is nothing better, right, than Olympic weightlifting and gymnastics. Right? So because if we're talking about just developing overall body tension without a weighted object, the gymnastic discipline becomes the most important thing that we can do. Not swinging a kettlebell.
So I can hear some of you guys out there right now, because I've talked to you, and I can hear you saying, hey, but for my gym population, for our specifics, you say, the feedback that I get from a few of you has been, hey, you know, I get it. I understand everything you're saying about live with this. It's just not what my people. It's just not what they're into. You're welcome. It's not what it's not what they enjoy. And here's my unequivocal or unshakable guidance for that. If you're interested, right? Your people, your clients, your athletes came to you as the subject matter expert. They're depending on you for that. So you're doing them a disservice if you're writing and providing programming that they quote unquote like. At the end of the day, you can make any of this stuff feel like adult recess. And the way we write it, the way Rudy constructs the Metcon is to go beyond just checking the box on the stimulus, but to do the stimulus in a sexy, fun way so that it does feel like adult recess. So one of the first things I learned from Rudy when we started coaching and running a gym together almost 10 years ago now at this point, I said, hey man, why don't you write it like this? It would be so much easier to facilitate like this. He said, no, dude, we write this at a level at the most optimal level, right? Regardless of how easy it is to facilitate or how much people like it, and people will shock you as far as the level that they can rise to. So don't put that glass ceiling on them. They will shock you. Now I can hear some of you, I'll just interpose some of the great feedback we've had. Well, hey John, I got people that are elderly or, you know, disabilities or this or that. Okay, cool, I understand. You have a large segment of your clients that might not ever do a full snatch. But here's our argument to that, or here's what we're saying. You meet them where they're at. Maybe it's doing it with a PVC pipe. Maybe it's just kettlebell swings. They can't go overhead, but they're working on the extension of the hips, right? And then the next time, maybe they pair that with overhead squats. We trust you guys. You're all extremely. It's very heartening when I talk to you guys as far as how well educated and how into programming the general gym affiliate owner population these days. It feels astounding.
Good. It feels like the nerds have always been the ones following.
Dude, the people still in the game at this point. They're
really
still
cool.
running successful affiliates because they're all the way into this. You guys know how to scale this stuff. And even if they never reach a point, say you're working with a 60, 70-year-old gentleman or lady, and they in their lifetime they're never going to reach that full snatch. The pursuit of that full snatch and you meeting them where they're at with the scales to lead to that, even though it might not end in actually a full snatch. One, you're not putting the glass ceiling on them. You're meeting where they're at and providing them with the stimulus and the coaching to see, because how many times you hear the doctors tell somebody they're never going to do this, and then they do that shit, right? You're not putting that glass ceiling on them. You're moving where they're at. You're not getting frustrated. You're not expecting more from them, but you're also not expecting less. You meet, and then the pursuit of trying to get to that snatch, one, hopefully, should be fun because they're working on something, and you're not just boring the tears out of them every day with the same glorified boot camp stuff you're saying, because we don't want to hurt anybody and we want to keep everybody happy, right? You're challenging with that progression, and who knows, maybe they do hit that snatch. The point is, you're not getting wrapped around the destination. You're meeting them where they're at and helping them enjoy the wellness and the fun they're going to have along the process, because it's always more fun to be working towards something bigger or better or more inclusive, even if you don't ever actually get there. That's the cherry on the top. That would be great. Awesome. So it doesn't have to be making Olympic weightlifters.
Yeah, I mean, just
Does
talking
that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, just talking about that group of people, the elderly group of people, or the people that they're non-athletes, right? What John said earlier, neural development, right? So the ability for the brain to send signals to the musculature of the body to make it move faster, right?
Yeah.
If we can develop that 10% to make the body move more fit, or the brain muscle sort of interaction more efficient, then not to be stupid, but we're talking about somebody that's now going to be able to maybe save themselves from falling down when they slip.
Right. That's
Right?
not stupid.
We're talking about reaction time development. We're talking about things that like that you can't put a price on.
Right. And I'm going to hit them with a beautiful example then. So here's our contention, right? You say this, it's not important, it's not a match, it's not for my clients. If your athletes are humans, if you're training other human beings, right, then our contention is that that's going to be that this programming and as much as you might have to scale it is going to be optimal for them, right? And a perfect example of that, our sites director at our gyms here, our 2 locations here, Ben Roberts, we're going to have him on one of the videos here soon to talk about how he implements the programming at 2 different locations on a daily basis, right? But a perfect example, his older sister came to us in a wheelchair. One of, if not my favorite athletes of all time, Sarah, came to us in a wheelchair. We met her where she was at, started slowly working on her standing up out of the wheelchair. Now she's running around the building and doing handstand push-ups.
Seriously?
Yes. I mean, it took a few years.
I think she's 2.5 years.
Yeah, dude. We met her where she was at. We didn't put a glass ceiling on her, right? And she provided the drive and the discipline and the persistence, which to me is way more impressive than anybody doing fitness for time in whatever event anywhere in the, you know. But
this stuff, the tier 1 movements, I added one in there. We probably won't even get to it right now, but the tier 1 movements, the Olympic lifts, and the high skill gymnastics, these are the things that however many years, 2002, so what's that, 17, 18 years ago, whenever CrossFit.com went online, these are the things that people looked at that were revolutionary, right? These are the things that for me drew me into the sport. Well, the clock drew me into the sport also. But these are things that when I looked at the site, and I was a strength and conditioning coach at the time, professional strength and conditioning coach at the time. But when I looked at these things, I was like, holy shit, they want us to do that as part of working out, like as part of fitness. And come to find out, these are the things, these 2 things develop more as far as fitness goes, as far as just being a human athlete, because we're all athletes, no matter whether you think you are or not, right? At some point, you got to step up on a curb, right? Yeah. At some point, your foot gets caught on something. You got to be able to catch yourself without falling down. Right. At some point, your car runs out of gas. You got to be able to run to the gas station or whatever, or you got to lift up a couch or something like that when you're moving, right? As far as developing all those things, and I keep going back to the neurological development and things like that, but there's nothing that develops more things than these things.
Yeah, and I want to take some pressure off you guys for a second too, because I'm just going through my head what could possibly be going through yours, because I've spent going on 9-10 years now as an affiliate owner myself, right? So just to take some pressure off, we don't expect you guys, if we were to come visit your gym, we wouldn't expect to come in and see people doing the Olympic lifts beautifully and perfectly.
Not the point.
Well, that's not the point. You know, we could come in and see people doing stuff with PVC pipes or kettlebells or 2-degree all jacked up technique, right? What we're saying is obviously there's a level of durability and overall safety, like somebody's lifting with a completely rounded back. Obviously, we're not saying, hey, that's okay, let them keep doing it. We're saying, hey, little flaws in technique here and there, getting open too soon, not catching at full depth, a little clunky, pulling a little early with the arms. That's okay. They're working on it. It's okay. It's not a reflection of you as a coach.
Yeah, we're talking about real people versus competitors now. There's a massive difference,
right?
Yeah.
Because what's going to make your business more sustainable and make a bigger impact in the world is training real people for real life, right? Now, they should enjoy trying to get better. They should enjoy the pursuit of trying to make it perfect, but perfection is unattainable, and you shouldn't put your pressure on yourself or your coaches. They're like, hey, it's a reflection of me as a coach if I come in and people aren't moving beautifully, right? You give the time and the space and the direction that people that are capable of that can do that. But what's just as awesome is somebody learning how to stand up out of a wheelchair and progressing from there.
Yeah.
She is actually now doing snatches. But my point is, what's more beautiful than the false idea of any kind of perfect movement is people working on moving better and more efficiently and raising the quality of life. That's freaking cool.
And the beauty is if we challenge them with these movements, right? They're working to the tip of the spear, right? If we say, well, that person's not mobile enough, that person's old, that person's weak, they can't get down into a full squat, blah blah blah. If we worry about those kind of things and we just eliminate these movements from their workout lexicon, right? Then we're doing them a gigantic disservice.
You're telling them all the stuff they've already heard a million times before. They can't, and you're not even necessarily saying that they can. You're just not saying that they can't. What you are saying is, I'm going to meet you where you're at, and we'll see how far that goes. And then take the pressure off yourself as far as you're not responsible for any specific outcome. I think a lot of us intrinsically do that subconsciously. Like, oh, we see somebody try to snatch. We see, I know you guys know your stuff. You see a whole laundry list of things, serious impediments to them being able to actually do a full snatching. And you immediately go, put all this pressure. Oh, I can't get them. They didn't come to you and ask you to actually get them to be an Olympic weightlifter, right? They did come to you saying, hey, I trust you to get me as fit and as well as optimally and efficiently and all-encompassingly as possible, and the snatch is a tool that you're going to use to do that. So let go of the idea of any particular outcome. Let go of this picture of them actually, who knows, maybe they shock you, maybe they do a full snatch one. That's not the point. The point is you're going to meet them where they're at. Maybe it's enough stuff they only get a little bit better, but that's as good as they were going to be able to get in pursuit of this the highest movement on this hierarchy is as efficiently as they're going to use their time, not every single day, but it's as the progression calls for.
We've talked about the Olympic lifts a lot, but I want to go to the gymnastics, and I always publicly, when I speak about CrossFit gymnastics, I always make fun of it, right? Because you're not actually, there's not a single gymnastic movement in a CrossFit workout.
Yeah, the muscle up is, they're like, oh, you mean...
Don't steal my joke.
Okay.
Go ahead. I'll let you have it.
Oh, you mean getting over the rings to start the rest of my impossibly hard routine?
Yeah.
You guys call that something? We call it getting on the rings.
The muscle up is the start, is how you start your routine, your ring routine, right? Yeah. The handstand push-up, that's not even a thing, right? Handstand walking is something that like 5-year-old gymnasts. Has the girls taken gymnastics?
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, can they handstand walk?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're 8, right? So that's something that gymnasts learn very early, right? But these movements are just as important as far as, for me, this is like the holy grail of full body tension and understanding how your body works in coordination with itself. So it's more of a kinetic chain development than there's some neural development there, but there's more kinetic chain development than anything else. And, it's like we were talking about earlier, there's a reason that when the gymnasts come in, you put a barbell in their hand, they're amazing with it right away, right? Because because of all that development, all those years of development and learning what their body feels like in space or how their body moves in space, then they get this sort of sixth sense about how to fire their hip, what are they pulling earlier with their arms, stuff like that. But as far as developing, I lost my train of thought. Fuck, I had a point I was getting to.
You said we've been talking about the Olympic lifts. You wanted to just switch over to the gymnastics because
the scaling of it. Okay, so and developing the athletes with this. For me, gymnastics are incredible. As a when I used to do CrossFit, the gymnastics stuff is incredibly frustrating to me, right? Insanely frustrating. Barbell, good to go, right? I can do that all day long. But if we're talking about the development of I have weird length arms and weird length upper arms, and turning over on a muscle up was really hard. And like developing those things was really hard. It was always something I neglected, and I always felt bad about it because I was a worse athlete because of it, right? But we've talked about, like, you know how to scale. The person just starts with a power snatch and getting through a full range of motion. This is when it's on you as a coach, especially with the gymnastics. Because I sucked so bad at gymnastics, I ended up developing a really full kind of glossary of movements to develop gymnastics, right? Like I ended up getting very good at coaching CrossFit gymnastics, very good at coaching gymnastics because there were things that I had to work on myself.
You knew how to address the
right, and I knew how to all those muscle up progressions that we used to do, the way that we teach the kipping pull up, etc. Right, those were things that I had to put together because of myself in the first place. And it's incredibly important that when it's time to get an athlete inverted, you don't run away from it, right? You know your scales. You study your Carl Paoli or your whatever it is, right? You go to your seminars, right? You figure out what those coaches, what kind of cues those coaches are giving. And when it comes to muscle ups, right? It's important. What was the old scale for muscle ups? It was always pull ups and ring dips. So you had all these people running around that could do all these pull ups and all these ring dips, and they just could never do a muscle up, right? We very, very early on, 2010, 2011, wanted everybody to be working towards a muscle up. So we would have them on the rings, right? We'd have them sitting in a ring doing just turnovers, stuff like that. Right, bar muscle up, same thing. We had a coach, Caitlin Hardy, that helped us develop a lot of scales for things like that and a lot of developmental tools. Yeah. So I don't want to completely. There's two sets of movements up here in the tier one. I don't want to completely focus on the Olympic lifts. Right.
Well, and that's a good point.
You know, one more thing. All right. It's funny because if you Olympic lift a lot, people always assume you're trying to make like competitive lifters, right? Everybody. Are we trying to make competitive gymnasts? Nobody ever assumes that.
Trying to make well-rounded human beings.
If you have somebody doing hollow rocks or arch holds or whatever, they never complain about you trying to make them into a gymnast, right? But that's gymnastic practice.
Well, and this is where I want to interject some more as far as messaging to the.
Who knew this topic would be this good? I did.
Did you really?
I kind of did, yeah. I was thinking about it all the way here.
So another thing I like to interject to our affiliate owners out there, something to keep in mind too. Most of your people, when they come to the gym, they don't know what a snatch is. They may or may not even know what a muscle up is or not. And then they become consumed with the perfection and the pursuit of these highly technical movements, and that's great. We definitely want to take advantage of that. That's part of the whole point. Is they're having fun. Hopefully having fun chasing these higher end movements, right? And getting fit and well at the same time, instead of just sitting on an elliptical or reading a magazine and wasting their life away on some type of equipment, right? Just to check a box to get fit. They're playing a sport or learning new activities and challenging. I read something recently or heard something recently. Maybe it was Joe Rogan's or anyway.
You're obsessed with Joe Rogan right now.
No, I'm not,
bro.
I see what you did there. This idea, this notion that there's areas of your brain encoded in your DNA or whatnot that are never even expressed or never even quote unquote wake up unless you're trying things that are drastically different and harder and challenging to what you're used to, right? So that challenge, the reason it being so difficult, that's part of it, and it's part of expressing, giving yourself a chance to express your full potential, right? And what I mean by that is, what the point I'm getting to is, it's great to have athletes and clients get obsessed with this notion, but I would strongly suggest, and working this into your messaging with your coaches, so they're giving it to your athletes as well, that you work in this notion of, okay, but don't forget to stop and smell the roses, enjoy the process, and remember that you signed up here not to be an Olympic weightlifter or a gymnast or do 1,000 muscle ups. Most people, and definitely what's the most sustainable model for your business, is to sign up people that are, hey, I'm trying to stay well, to be there for my family, to be there for myself, to continue to do the things I love, to live a higher quality life, et cetera, et cetera. Hold on,
I know, just the point. I don't want to forget it.
Okay,
go ahead.
The point I'm making is that along those lines, picking up these other passions along the way, like, hey, I want to do a full snatch, I want to do a muscle up, that's great. But if they're not enjoying that process, right? If they're not enjoying the day in and day out routine of that, and the relationships they're building with the other athletes and the coaches and just the routines of training and the whole experience, right? And then they say they train for 2 years and they finally get that muscle up, right? That's great, but the stoke from that is going to last what? A week, maybe 2, and it'll be a real thing. It'll be tangible. They'll be riding that high, and then a week, maybe 2, that's going to drain away. It's going to be old news to their brain and their body and everything else. And if they spent 2 years, is a week or 2 of extra stoke worth all that? In my opinion, it's awesome. It should be the cherry on top of what, when they look back 2 years, I met so-and-so and I trained hard with so-and-so and staying focused on that helped me get through this, and this with more momentum and more mental clarity, et cetera, et cetera. And that's looking back. And I can speak from experience on that personally, because I hit some for me, were lifting goals, powerlifting goals. And looking back, I hit the goal. I lifted weight that I never thought I could lift, or lifetime goals. And the stoke lasted a day, dude. In some cases, a few hours. And in some of those cases, those were numbers that I had been chasing for years.
That 600-pound deadlift didn't last longer than a day.
It was a couple days, man. I was super stoked, right? And I looked around and I was like, man. But what really did last was it was a really cool group of individuals that I was training with at the time, and the faces that were there to witness it and help me train to get there. That was cool, and I have zero regrets. But looking back and from here on out, moving forward, it's like that group of people could have been a lot bigger, right? It could have helped inspire a lot more, right? And I could have, if I kept my eyes on the prize as far as what's the real goal for me, which now is, training for my family and to be there for my girls. I could have worked more of that into it. Maybe would have been a little bit more conservative with the timeline and not lifted so much, still get to the 600-pound deadlift, but maybe not so fast to the detriment of joints and ligaments, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, that's the real value. I feel like you as affiliate owners, the passion you have for that fitness and for people around you, bringing that message in person in their daily lives to them and your coaches and other people is going to be way more fulfilling and powerful than like getting wrapped around the axle in terms of coming up with a programming that's going to get them to the muscle up.
I'll be honest, when I snatched 112,
yeah,
I'll never forget that.
Yeah, I'll never forget.
The
cherry on top is
one
awesome,
of the greatest moments of my life.
The cherry on top is awesome. That moment in and of itself is awesome. One of the best moments of our lives as athletes. We all have those moments. I'm not taking anything away from that actual moment. I'm just saying you could add to that moment by being a little bit more mindful and a little bit more present and putting a little bit more meaning into the whole process leading to it. I tell my girls that now as they get into like jiu-jitsu and soccer. It's like, hey, that's all great, and the pursuit of those sports is great, but I'm just saying stop and smell the roses, I guess.
Yeah, so the takeaway, I think we'll finish this as one video and maybe address the sort of the other movements in another one, but the takeaway here has got to be the reason we do these movements so much is because they are so difficult, right? They must be done often. So about 3.5 hours ago, right as we were finishing our epic discussion of Tier 1, the Olympic lifts, and the high school gymnastics, John's phone died. So
it was Rudy's fault, though.
We're going to do Tier 2 next. So stay tuned.